NieR Automata may just be the best game of all time. A game about existentialism, high-octane combat, and hot androids starring our own androids 2B, 9S, and A2. Whilst they normally have no reservations about cutting down their machine lifeform enemies, what if they threw their hatred aside and decided to be pretty bad soldiers? Can you beat NieR Automata as a pacifist? NieR Automata is broken up into 17 different chapters, split among 3 perspectives. Route A focuses on 2B, Route B focuses on 9S, and Route C being split between 9S and A2. Because Route A and B are nearly identical, I'll be covering every chapter up to the end of both routes by showing if it's possible for 2B and 9S, before covering Route C normally. But what about the rules? Simple. I'm not allowed to directly harm any enemies. I cannot press a button that would cause me to directly harm an enemy. However, NPC allies are allowed to do whatever they want, and enemies can damage themselves. With that out of the way, let's get to...
Everything that lives is designed to end. We are perpetually trapped in a never-ending spiral of life and death.
Starting with 2B's section, we start the prologue by watching our friends get shot down one by one until we're confronted by our first group of machines, and we're dead. Okay, so truth be told, it is pretty much impossible to do our little plan within flight units. I didn't mention this, but I'm doing this on hard mode, and given enemies in these sections always level scale, and you're forced to kill these enemies, we're gonna have to make an exception to the rules and say flight unit sections don't count. Alright, with that out of the way, let's get into attempt number 2. So why am I letting myself get hit? Well, let's talk about my build. I have a melee and range up for extra defense, max HP up to increase my survivability, an auto heal to get me out of sticky situations, and the key here is the Vengeance, which gives me 35% chance to deal all damage I'm dealt back to the enemy, and a taunt up +3, increasing enemy damage massively. I'm not harming the enemy, but they get to hurt themselves from harming me. That is also why I needed to be level 99, so I could even have this build. The trade-off is that this takes a very, very long time. So I fire up a podcast as this machine eventually dies from punching 2B one too many times, and we're on to the first boss of the section, Marks, who can barely hurt me at the best of times, which forces me to reposition myself constantly in order to get 2B in position to be hurt. And frankly, this is the rest of Chapter 1. And aside from learning this kit does work against ranged enemies, as well, nothing else really happens here, with it culminating in the final boss fight of the section, the Angles, which is completely possible on the ground, but it ends in a flight unit section in both 2B and 9S's runs. So let's move on to...
Target location acquired. Marking on map. Proposal. Proceed to target location.
For both 2B and 9S, we are told by the commander to make it to the surface and contact our friends in the Resistance. So, we drop down into the city ruins and do some minor fetch quests, which are substantially easier as 9S given his enemies are a higher level, and now that we have an NPC follower, we let them handle the enemies for us. We complete the quests and are told to go to the desert to meet a contact and investigate machine activity, leading us to...
Name's Jackass. Nice to meet ya. Wouldn't want to have anyone getting tangled up in that, now would we?
After watching a perfectly good gate get blown up by Jackass, yes, that is her name, we traverse the desert and chase after a fleeing machine deep into the desert city complex before coming to a mosh pit of enemies. I want to show this part with 2B's perspective to show it's perfectly possible, as despite the huge level difference making the enemies take little rebound damage, our NPC partner, in this case 9S, selflessly kills the enemy. So we continue with the run. Now onto the first Adam boss fight, which is kind of a joke. See for yourself. So as I stand and do literally nothing, Adam gets put down, then proceeds to give birth before our very eyes, and we're on to... 2B and 9S make their way to a whimsical, if derelict, amusement park full of clown machines. We run on past and confront the clown tank mini-boss. Now, did you see how the boss's HP bar melted? If you look closely, I flashed my pod's flashlight at it. It doesn't do damage, but it does taunt it, which causes both us and the enemy to have 400% more attack power. Me and my partner, in this case 2B, shredded it like butter. After I stand around and embrace pacifism in the roller coaster section, we come to the boss of the chapter, Bourgeois, aka the Mad Songstress. Trust me guys, the run gets a whole lot harder come the end of the game, believe me. Anyway, the Songstress shows us yet another sticking point in the rules. Hacking. I mean, we do have to shoot in the realm, so the way I see it, we are not allowed to hack on our own unless it does no damage to anyone. And we are allowed to defend ourselves if we're hacked by someone else. Either way, 9S this time around lets 2B do all the work, killing the minions. We watch as 2B literally doesn't give the Songstress a single chance, and we blow her to bits, taking us to...
It's resonating in tandem with the area beneath the combat zone.
2B and 9S start this chapter going to a village of fellow pacifists and meet the head pacifist in charge, our boy Pascal. After doing a minor fetch quest, machines end up storming the city ruins, and it's our job to stop them. As you can see in my 9S run of the part, our partner is more than capable of dealing with the angles on her own, both from the ground and in the flight unit above. This takes us to the boss battle with Adam and Eve within the alien mothership after we find out the aliens are dead. Now, as you can see in my 2B run of the mission, my partner is busy fighting the other boss, so what's the plan? Well, the boss is actually timed, so I do the brilliant play of teaching them about my pacifism, and in exchange, the brothers decide to spare our lives and run away. Once they run away, we report to command about what we learned and get to... The King of the Forest, of course, takes us to the Forest Kingdom, which is more like a giant dungeon with a boss waiting for us at the top. The first hurdle is getting past the machine patrols in the area, which I decided to teach my pacifism just for the fun of it. Next up is a courtyard battle with a reverse machine Goliath and some reinforcements, in which I try and look cool for the final explosion. I failed. This is when we finally storm the castle itself. The insides of the forest castle make for some pretty close quarters fighting, but between my partner and my plug-in ships dealing damage on them hitting me, we managed to gradually fight our way up and up until we come to confront the child regicide herself, A2. Fun fact is, A2 will stand there until you make the first move, and given I have no intent to fight, this seems like a no-win situation. Until our partner, in this case 9S, gets a bit trigger-happy and begins his one-on-one with A2. I provide no help in this fight, of course, besides moral support, and after a brief skirmish, A2 decides we aren't worth their time and opts to abandon the fight, taking us ultimately to...
Well, that's new.
We can skip this chapter. For 2B, this is literally just your average flight unit section, which, as we already established, is impossible to avoid. Technically, it's more than possible to kill individual enemies with the current strategy, but it's just far too inconsistent, and for this many enemies, it relies on healing items, which I've told myself not to do. We can let our partner legitimately defeat the Goliath flyer that comes next, however, so that's pretty cool. This is where paths do split. As for 9S, he pretty much gets an extended cutscene, which results in completely skip Chapter 8. Speaking of Chapter 8...
That's it. That's the feeling. Pure hate! Come to me!
This is where the first hurdle of the run comes in. With 9S having been kidnapped and out of commission, it comes down to 2B to battle Adam alone, and truth be told, This is where I begin to regret my decision to start at such a high level. With Adam being such a low level relative to 2B, it meant less that this would be a hard fight and more that I would have to sit here for a really long time. Knowing that later in the game I would have to actually worry about my health, I wondered if this was worth it in the moment. Well, Phase 1 Adam is at least on a time limit, so we eventually do make it past that, but now we're on to Phase 2. Between Phase 2 and 3, Adam has a total of 27,249 HP. And as you can see, we are taking 4 damage a hit, meaning whenever Vengeance procs, he also takes 4 damage apiece. It would take well over 6,000 hits, if he hit me every time, for Adam to die. Luckily, I have one last trick up my sleeve. You see, the rules state I cannot directly do any damage, but my allies are allowed to do whatever they want, so long as I don't control it. After searching my plugin chips for some sort of advantage, I eventually come to a solution: the decoy. The decoy pod program has my pod land and create a fake version of the character to fool enemies, and the pod automatically fires when close by enemies. When decoy is active, I'm not controlling the pod, meaning 2B technically doesn't break our pacifism rules. It isn't a solution I'm proud of, but until enemy levels catch up to me, it's my only hope. So after making quick work of Adam's Phase 2, we go on to Phase 3. And I do nothing as Adam is stupid enough to fall for a decoy. I let him air combo me for the sake of fairness, and as I place my last decoy, Adam tries to iframe it by grabbing me, but despite his best efforts, Adam gets himself killed, 2B rescues 9S, and we finally move on to
His wondrous grace has become a god. Become a god. His wondrous grace has become a god. Become a god. We as well shall become as gods. Become as gods.
This is where 2B's Route A and 9S's Route B significantly diverge. For 2B, we accompany Pascal to negotiate peace with the Machine Death Cult, which shockingly goes poorly. This forces me to use a combination of vengeance damage as well as the decoy to defeat the crazed lunatics and then escape the room. From there, we have to make a daring escape from the bowels of the machine factory. Frankly, the rest of the level is easy as there's no mandatory encounters until we reach the boss of the section, Soshi. The first stage of this boss is literally once again on a timer, where the boss is invincible until 9S can shut down its shield. More on that later. But once it goes down, we try and convince Soshi of our pacifistic ways, but when that predictably fails, we have to use our decoy, which completely melts it. It merely triggers its ending cutscene animation, and 2B proceeds to slice Soshi down. On the flip side, 9S has a massive hacking section to do whilst all this happens. There are two parts of this. The first is the section where we control a machine lifeform in order to help 2B. And next up is the raw hacking section. And because there are no enemies who have HP pools to be damaged, that means the entire hacking session is completely free. This all finally leads us to...
As far as I'm concerned, my brother was everything. And now, everything must die!
Loss begins with us rushing to the scene to rescue the android resistance being ripped apart by machines. You may have noticed I equipped a chip recently that prevents us from staggering, which means I get to face-hug the enemy at this level and force them to know my pacifism, whether they want to or not. We then move on to the Spinning Orb of Doom, number 2, and I want you to just look at how the machine's best troops can't even take down a common moose. Well, after melting it with decoy for the first time ever, we take down a boss with vengeance damage, and 9S comes crashing to our rescue and rejoins us so he can do all the work and take down the next two mini-bosses with ease. And now we're on to Eve, the final boss of both Route A and Route B. Will I be able to beat him?
Remember your pain. The pain of having your homeland stolen. We will never give up our struggle. Glory to mankind!
Glory to mankind!
With E's defeat, there's only one route, so no more switching back and forth. With 9S, we notably have to hack some enemies, but for this mission, we don't do any damage, and we won't kill them as they're clearly still alive, if a bit twitchy. In 2B's air section, it is of course off limits, but you can actually wait out most of the machines as they're on their timer. Now let's talk war. Me and 9S's job is to support the other android units during the final battle for the city ruins. As you can see with the increase in level, we are finally actually getting damaged, and I add a new chip which should allow us to heal from damaging foes to help our survivability. Given we have 9S and a bunch of extra androids, needless to say, we observe passively as the others clean up the mess. Although our build doesn't exactly make us immortal, I am becoming concerned about that. We help clean up several more battle zones before the machines corrupt the Yorha, forcing 9S to try and rescue them whilst being hacked, which looks like this. Given I could only use decoy, that was about 10 minutes of footage that looked horrible. But once we got 2B back on our feet, I let 9S, now an NPC, take care of the corrupted Yorha and machines alike on the ground, meaning all we have to do is buy enough time to self-destruct and wind up back on the bunker. Unfortunately for us, the bunker has also fallen to the virus menace, forcing me to use my decoy in the main room to dispatch our former comrades, whilst 9S cleared our path in the hallway. I am sure our tortured friends understand why I had to prolong their suffering, right? 2B and 9S are forced to abandon the crumbling bunker. 2B meets her ultimate demise. 9S falls down a hole, and a tower literally grows out the sky, leading us to...
I said shut up! Just shut up.
So we play as A2 for the first time, and for the first time, the build is looking pretty good. As you can see when fighting this machine flyer, we are more than capable of not only doing considerable damage, but we can even destroy it. Oh, happy day. From there we head to the desert to take out 3 Goliath bipeds, which largely goes well, as our chance to absorb damage, as well as passively healing whenever we take damage, works to keep us healthy. Although we do need to run now and again and wait for auto heal, and strangely, while we're able to do nothing and bring them down to probably 1 HP, they never seem to die from the damage. No matter. We simply use decoy to finish them off. However, the boss of the chapter, Hegel, presents us with a tougher challenge. Mostly because no matter what I do, it is impossible to harm them. You're looking at footage of this run, and as you can see, Hegel takes no damage from me standing there and seems to ignore decoy for some reason. Even passive damage chips like bullet detonation doesn't seem to work. This means we are forced to break our vow of pacifism and officially break the run. But given we are 12 chapters out of 17, let's see if we can keep rule breaks to just 1 and move on to...
Morning. Slept well, didn't you, 9S?
Meatbox is where we meet 9S again after the downfall of Yorha, and most revolves around him having to take down a resource recovery unit known as the Meatbox. Boxes like these are basically battle trials in which you kill everything to make it to the top. I know my build works, but if we get a repeat of Hegel, we could be in big trouble. But if I'm being honest here, it was rather easy. Mostly me having to stand around all whilst the enemy do more damage to themselves than to me. Make no mistake, they do often do big damage to me, but nothing I can't recover from. It is also a great time to mention the steam you see here is from me taunting them, making them deal more damage to me and in turn themselves. Anyway, after a room full of terrorist machines blow themselves up on their own will, and 9S ruthlessly execute an orb begging for mercy like a maniac...
9S.
Fire.
So that's cool. An enemy begs us to end their self-inflicted pain and suffering, to which we walk away from them like the hero we are, and we finally make it to the top and move on to...
No, how can this...
Well, back with A2, we start out strong by sparing a fellow pacifist's life and letting them fly away. We then go to the forest to grab an item, and then I run away from everything. We let a mad dog put itself down by letting it smash right into our faces really hard, to the point it nearly kills us when we taunt it, but it's okay. Pascal decides to read a nice book, and holy shit, the entire village is burning down. This part is monumentally easy. As for the normal machines, even if they don't target you, simply let decoy do the work. This strategy works for both the drill snake machine and even the barb snake machine at the end of this section with ease. We then regroup with Pascal at the machine factory, where I have to fight a literal war as waves of mad machines try and storm the factory. The first part of it is fine, as Pascal has a giant fuck-off laser, which makes quick work with the machines, but it isn't long until I'm on my own, literally mobbed in a sea of machines, and even a tank gets involved. Just look at how many enemies I'm getting mobbed by. In a bid to break the stalemate, I have A2 jump on the back of the tank and hope to defeat it with a vengeance damage to move on to the next scene, but in a scene that reminded me of Hegel, the tank was brought down to a sliver but refused to die on its own, and its damage output was so high I was forced to retreat time and time again. I even tried to use bullet detonation again to no avail despite my best efforts. I finish it off with the anticlimactic decoy and move on to the part where Pascal comes in with a goddamn mech and makes me fail the challenge again. The first part with the angle is completely doable. Simply walk into the enemy. I'm not doing anything, I'm walking and they're dying. However, you have to break the rules by battling the rival angles, which marks the second time this run has failed. And it was all for nothing, as the children all took their own lives out of fear, and Pascal asked me to make a tough choice.
I cannot live with this heartbreak inside me. I need you. I need you to delete my memories. And if not, then I need you to kill me.
As hard as it is, I choose the run over Pascal, and I walk away.
How could you? A2.
They're mine! My memories! You hear me?
Back with 9S, we tackle the next resource recovery unit, this time the Soul Box. The Soul Box is a hacking puzzle, and notably, we only have to hack a bunch of chests. So we can basically skip discussing 90% of this chapter. We then reach the top where 9S sees his memories and 2B, which turn into a hideous blob monster. Yeah, well, as usual, it does damage to itself, but it packs a hell of a wallop of its own. And of course, it also can't be beaten by me doing nothing. Shocker, right? Gotta love the Hegel treatment. As usual, I have to finish off its last sliver of HP with decoy to get past, and I have a bit of a crash out. And resident twins Popola and Devila make a request we probably can't keep.
Don't die alone. I don't think 2B would want that either.
Leading us to
Friendly to be with. Please. Kill.
now for the third and final resource recovery unit, the God Box. What is the God Box exactly? More machine life forms, of course. At this point, I think you guys get the picture. We stand around, we kill some fodder, so let's get to the first interesting part of the chapter, Operator 210. Operator 210 was 9S's former bunker contact during his Yorha days, and now she is corrupted beyond help. She leads with this barrier with a moving weakness. Well, we weaken it with a decoy before deciding that I was feeling pretty lazy and let the barrier somehow destroy itself by shooting me too many times. Once we get into the fight proper, you are really beginning to see my build isn't as invincible as it had once been. Make no mistake, it is far from flimsy, and 210 has no real ability to stop me when I turn to run away when I needed to heal. After a while, 210's strength finally fails, and A2 put the operator out of her misery. Now it's A2's turn to get in on the action with the worst boss in the game, Auguste, who promptly misses me even when I'm not moving or I'm actively trying to be hit. Yeah, I decoy him out of existence. However, his little brothers crawl at A2's feet and beg for his life. Well, as a pacifist, of course I oblige, leading us, finally, to... This is the final chapter of the game. We start by returning to the base of the aforementioned tower and unlock each of the subunits and hack into them to unlock them. And once we begin tackling the main tower lock, Popola and Devila come to our aid to hold off the machine onslaught whilst we work on getting the lock open. However, seeing it was impossible, Popola sacrifices herself so that 9S can enter. Once 9S enters the tower proper, it isn't long until 9S is confronted by not just one, no, but 10 2B copies, and he's just so excited to show off his passive to 2B.
I'll tear you apart. Every last one of you!
The 2B horde was a very nice challenge for me, as basically it became a giant colorful mosh pit, as it became a race of their HB bars and RNG to see if my chips would heal me faster than I was damaged. Of course, I had to retreat now and again to heal, and given how many enemies there was always the risk they would interrupt me. But it went from 10 2Bs to 8, then to only 3 2Bs remained, and finally only 1, and then there were none. Whilst A2 goes on to explore the copied library, and seeing our boss fight Trophy Room, 9S is forced to hack into himself, and then confronts the true villains of the game, the Red Girls.
Welcome to the tower. Welcome to the tower. Because you made it this far, we have a special announcement just for you.
They are the ego of all machines, and they challenge us to destroy some machines in the room. And now that the enemies are legitimately winning HP exchanges now, I see no reason not to break out the old decoy strat mixed in with the damage tanking. We win the challenge, and the truth of Project Yorha is revealed to us. The Red Girls ask us if we still want to fight. Well, how dare they question my pacifism? We are then forced to battle some Yorha inside of flight units, who somehow do worse than the random machines we fought a second ago. No matter. We swat him aside, and 9S commandeers a flight unit and takes to the air. Meanwhile, A2 battles against Koshi in the library. Koshi is literally free. Although he routinely comes close to one-shotting us with his missile volley, we can taunt him and heal him before he can fire again, and the RNG lets us heal from being hit as often as we are damaged. So with a belly flop onto the library floor, the robot retreats, leading A2 to her own confrontation with the Red Girl, which is again completely free. Phase 1 is a matter of simply decoy spamming until they go away, with Phase 2 literally being about not doing any damage at all to beat the boss. Well, given that's kind of the point, we easily accomplish this goal, and A2 watches as the Red Girls crumble under the weight of our pacifism. Now we get to the last climb of the tower. For A2, she has to battle against Koshi on the moving elevator. He is fairly tanky, but a full power decoy wheedles his health enough that some vengeance damage is all that is needed to send him packing. On the other end of things, 9S is in yet another flight unit section, which we can technically skip. However, uniquely, except for the initial enemies, you can skip the second wave as they fly off the screen, and the boss Roshi can be damage traded so long as you're willing to use healing items. Meanwhile, between Koshi phases, A2 does have to deal with more common mobs, which still goes as well as you think, though I do have to say I almost pay the price for getting greedy. After Roshi finally lets 9S fight it like a normal boss, which lets us quickly melt it down, A2 and 9S finally meet at the top of the tower to confront Koshi and Roshi.
official designation is 2E. Number 2 Type E. They were a special class of members designed to execute your high units. But you knew that, right, 9S?
All that is left is who to pick for the final showdown. I choose to pick A2, as in the spirit of the run, she canonically doesn't kill 9S at the end of the match. 9S is easily the most dynamic boss we've faced all game, and I intend to tell you how to beat it without ever having to use decoy. First of all, you need to understand that 9S has a pattern, in which he will always shoot you with his pod, then attempt a pod program designed to stagger or slow you before following up with a hack attempt. Let's start with the first of these attack options, the pod fire. Simply put, this is how we will get 9S to damage us in this boss fight. It's his weakest attack, and it has such a high spread that it is impossible, even with bad RNG, for it to kill us on its own so long as you don't go for a taunt, which just isn't worth the risk here. Basically, whenever 9S goes for this move, either don't move, or move in his direction and let the RNG slowly chip him. Next, he will attempt to use a pod program. Now, 9S has a wide variety of these, and not all come out equally. He will rarely go for hammer, bombs, and wave, but more commonly go for slow and gravity. These programs create an AoE region that hampers your movement. When you see 9S stop after the shooting phase, keep running, as the range of these moves is surprisingly large and come out quick, and being hit makes you more vulnerable to his hacking. As for the hacking, 9S has 2 types. The more common type of hacking will screw with your abilities in some way, messing up your visuals, your controls, your audio, or other effect. When you see 9S stop and a translucent ring forms around you, jump in and dodge immediately to consistently avoid this attack. It is quick and you'll probably still get hit, but it will certainly minimize the chance. The second kind of hack forces you into a hacking minigame. Don't worry, this is self-defense and it doesn't harm 9S to beat. Sometimes the 2 types of hacks combine for some wonky combinations, so be careful. Once you have a sense of 9S's patterns, it's all a matter of endurance, and eventually 9S will crumble before your pacifism.
Pod! Hack it!
Acknowledged.
A2 then enters the hacking space within 9S's head, climbs the 10,000 steps to reach the top, and fittingly for a pacifist run, spares 9S's life. Thanks to A2, the tower collapses, and A2 accepts the beauty in the world she had missed, and we prove that you can mostly beat NieR Automata as a pacifist. You can complete 2B's entire route without having to directly harm anyone. 9S, despite being insane, is also able to get by without causing any deaths as well. A2 is forced to turn her guns on Hegel, the desert boss, meaning she broke the challenge once, and technically, Pascal, in the brief time we play as him, has to destroy an Engels, which is the challenge's second loss. Overall, coupled with the fact that you can beat the final boss as a true pacifist, I consider it a personal success. Let me know what you think down in the comments below, but until next time, be safe, be wise, and remember to pray for a true peace in space. See you next time.